Hello and welcome to Writings from the Hills. My name is Lori, and this week I am spotlighting a book. It's a favorite of mine. It's called Blue Jacket, The War Chief of the Shawnees. This is by Allan W. Eckert. I want to thank the Jesse Stewart Foundation for giving us permission to read this book for our program. And I will tell you, this is one of my favorite books. If you like reading about the Native Americans who lived in our area prior to the settling of the pioneers, this is an excellent book. This is actually not about a native-born Native American. This is actually about a white boy named Marmaduke Vincent, who actually gets captured by the Shawnee Indians in what is now West Virginia. And he basically steps in to save his brother from being kidnapped, and he volunteers to become a member of the tribe. And he not only does he impress the natives that were there with his bravery, they adopted him, and he actually adopted into the tribe and was given the name Blue Jacket. And this is his tale. If you guys are familiar with Allan Eckert, he wrote The Frontiersman and a lot of other books. He is an excellent writer. He has since passed away. The Jesse Stewart Foundation has a lot of his books, as do we. And I am starting with Blue Jacket. Wednesday morning, June 5th, 1771. "Listen, Marmee, you dunderhead," Vance said irritably. "It's about time you quit playing like as if you were a stupid Injun. These just ain't no good reason for all the time running off in the woods and hunting with that crazy bow and arrow. What for you think Pa'll give you that gun?" Vance Vincent paused to give his younger brother a chance to reply. When the boy merely stared at him and tightened his lips, he shook his head. "Sometimes nowadays," he said, "I get to thinking maybe Tom's right, and you are sort of funny in the head. Ain't normal for people for nobody to like Injuns like you do, and try to act like 'em all the time. About time you started acting like a white boy, hear?" The boy he had called Marmee still said nothing, and merely continued lacing a high moccasin around his calf. Vance snorted. "Dang Injun lover. You like the savages so much, why don't you just go on and live with them instead of hanging around here? Ain't none of us wants us to have no dang Injun lover in the family. Reckon you need to be straightened out some." Vance turned on his heel and strode from the room, banging the door loudly after him. For a long while the younger boy remained motionless, lost in thought. He hadn't trusted himself to answer when Vance was talking, because it had ended up in another fight. Not that he couldn't take Vance, if it came to that. Vance might be 6 years older, but he wasn't fast enough anymore, or strong enough, or even big enough. But if they had fought, his other brothers would have come running along. Long ago he had learned he couldn't fight all of them at once. The boy grunted in anger and frustration. He began to wind the long laces of his moccasin boot around his other leg. Why, he wondered. Couldn't his family understand how he felt? After all, whether they liked it or not, Indians were people, not animals. The cabin door banged open again, and his younger brother, 12-year-old Charlie, clattered in. His sand-colored hair was mussed, and his eyes were flashing with excitement. "Whoo-wee! You sure got Vance all stirred up, Duke. He's out there telling the others that you're aiming to go out and act like a savage again. Telling them all ought to get you out there and teach you another lesson." His eyes widened, and he added hastily, "I think they really aim to do it, Duke. Better light out in a hurry, or you're in for it. And this time Pa ain't home to bust it up." The older boy nodded. It wouldn't be the first time he had been ganged up by his elder brothers, John, Tom, Steele, Vance, and Joe. Moving quickly, he finished lacing up his moccasin, and then from the table scooped up his narrow-bladed skinning knife in its bark sheath and shoved it in the waistband of his coarsely woven trousers. It was not the first time his younger brother had warned him in time, and he was grateful to Charlie. Grateful, too, that Charlie continued to call him Duke, rather than that detestable nickname of Marmee, which all the rest of them used. His name was Marmaduke Vincent, and he was 17 years old. He was tall for his age, and he was well-formed. His hair was very dark, and his features were well-formed. But much to the disgust of nearly everyone who knew him, he had an abiding admiration for Indians. It didn't matter what tribe they belonged to, either. Duke simply felt that the Indians had been very badly treated by the whites in almost every encounter, and that their way of life was better by far than the white men's ways. The fact that outlying settlements and isolated cabins nearby had been attacked on occasion, and their occupants killed by marauding Indians, made little difference to him. After all, the whites had stolen their lands, hadn't they? And how many Indians had been killed by the whites without cause? As far as Duke was concerned, the Indians had a good reason for their raids. Now, from a peg near the door, he took down a light blue hunting shirt woven of flax and wool, the material commonly called linsey woolsey, and put it over his bare and well-tanned chest. It really looked more like a vest now that he carefully constructed a long-sleeved garment his mother had made for him. The collar was gone, and he had ripped off both sleeves to the shoulders, and only one button remained to hold it together. He strode over to the low bed, hardly more than a pad on the floor, and took down from the wall a highly polished bow and raccoon-skin quiver. The 8 or 9 arrows in the quiver were fletched with turkey feathers and tipped with sharpened pieces of bone. Ever since he was 9, he wanted to be like them. When he heard the encounters between white and Indians, he always, with perverse loyalty, felt a lift of his spirits if it had been the whites who were bested. More than once he had announced wistfully that when he became a man he would take up the wonderfully free life of the Indians and live his days out happily with some tribe. Well, if you would like to read more about Blue Jacket, you can borrow this book by going to our website at www.briggslibrary.com or calling any of our locations to reserve a copy. Again, this is Blue Jacket by Allan W. Eckert. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.